So let's talk a little more about Canelo-Crawford in the lead up to this fight. A lot of stuff has come out recently. The arrivals have happened. Lots of people have given their take on the fight. Lots of pros have come in and talked about what they think is going to happen. Lots of the top commentators have given their predictions. And of course, we've had this news about Terence Crawford's shoulder, when he jokingly said that both his shoulders were injured. But apparently, Terence Crawford has an injured shoulder. And to me, my gauge on the situation is that there's three possibilities, right? Either he's actually injured, which, this is boxing. We all know how that works. If he loses, it's going to be that built-in excuse. Everybody's going to come in after the fight. Oh, he only lost because of the shoulder, and in 20 plus years on the boxing forum, people are going to still be going, oh, Bud only lost to Canelo because of the shoulder. Bud only lost because of the shoulder. The second possibility is it's just fake, right? Of course, it just isn't happening. His shoulder's fine. And the third possibility is that it's a bit of a false flag by the Bud camp. In the Netflix documentary, they go to this Mexican boxing gym and they talk to these kids about what they think is going to happen in the Canelo fight. These two teenagers who are there training at the gym, and they say, Canelo's going to hit the shoulders. It's the Mexican style. He's going to hit Crawford in the shoulders and tire him out. So I think it could be a bit of a move, a bit of a play by Crawford here, sort of saying, my shoulder's injured, my shoulder's weak, so that Canelo will do the classic Mexican style move, hit the shoulders, try to tire him out. I think Crawford has a punch that he thinks can counter Canelo's shoulder punching, right? Crawford has fought a lot of Mexicans. Crawford has a lot of experience against Mexican fighters. He knows how to counter the Mexican style. And I think Terence Crawford has a very specific punch in mind for this fight when Canelo goes to the shoulder. And it's like I said in my preview video, Crawford is going to be the most dangerous in this fight in that period after he downloads information. Right? Crawford isn't really a super fast starter immediately into the first round. He's capable of he'll throw big bombs in the first round and he can always land one. But you can tell that in the first 3 rounds of a fight, he's downloading information and sort of gauging how to really start stalking his opponent. And he's really the most dangerous in between rounds 3 and 6. And in my prediction video, I said, I think that's when Crawford actually in this fight is going to get hit moving forward. And, I also said in my preview that I think Canelo is a little scared of Crawford in this fight. I've watched some Canelo interviews in the intervening days, and I actually think it's more likely that Canelo is scared of this fight because he doesn't think he's going to be able to move forward. And that's a keen observation. Crawford being a switch hitter is a big part of what it's going to make it a lot harder for Canelo to move forward. Crawford's going to be able to switch stances. That isn't necessarily the same as closing off the ring like a larger man can. But Crawford does have a reach advantage and he's a switch hitter. So it's going to be hard for Canelo to get out from in front of him and to actually stalk him down, which because of Canelo's skill, astonishingly enough, in all of his recent fights, he has been able to just pretty much walk down and plod forward at much larger men. For both of them, it's potentially the hardest fight of their entire career. It's definitely the hardest fight of Terence Crawford's entire career, and that's a big part of why I'm still picking Canelo and why I think to a certain extent Crawford doesn't really understand what he's in for here. And I think that it's a fight that would actually behoove Crawford and Canelo, obviously, to sit on their shots. I want to see both of these guys sit on their shots and at a certain point to try to knock the other guy out. Because, I was watching Canelo versus Triple G, Canelo versus Triple G 2, and it frustrates me too much to watch the first fight. That 118-110 scorecard pisses me off to the end of the earth, and I just can't watch it. Golovkin won that fight. But the second fight, which Canelo won, it's very clear immediately in that second fight that these are two fighters. Like I said, it's the hardest fight of Canelo's career, probably Mayweather, but a very hard opponent for Canelo, and it's definitely the hardest fight of Golovkin's career, right? So it's a mutual hardest opponent for both fighters, and it's immediately clear in Canelo Triple G2 that both of these guys have knocked out pretty much everybody else that they fought, and this time they realize that this guy is too good to KO, and it's very clear when you watch Canelo Triple G2 that neither of these guys are going to get knocked out. This is going to go to decision pretty much from round 1. It's an incredibly high-level technical fight. Maybe one of the most high-level boxing matches in history. And also, speaking of Canelo Triple G2, it's one of those fights where this is way too rare in boxing. You really can tell these are the two best middleweights in the world, man. Canelo and Triple G at that time. There's no way those weren't the actual two best middleweights on the planet. In boxing, it can get real sketchy. Nah, Canelo Triple G2, those were the two best middleweights in the world. No question about it. and they went toe to toe, but it was a very technical, tactical boxing match. And I think that there's a really good chance, especially again after Terence Crawford has, I believe, those few big rounds he's going to have in the middle of the fight, and it sort of settles and starts to turn into Canelo's fight towards the end. It's really going to be a technical, staying at range, getting in and out. They're not going to be letting each other hurt each other, because that's what always gets lost in these fights and always surprises people, and what tends to really bum out the casuals and give, just combat sports in general that sort of bad name of everybody hypes up these fights and then they're boring. Because in order to get to the point that Canelo has, and in order to get to the point that Terence Crawford has, these two guys have to be some of the best defensive fighters in the world. And that means protecting yourself. And you see Canelo fans saying Terence Crawford's going to run, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I think those people probably have never watched the Terence Crawford fight before. But there's a lot Canelo can do with his guard. There's a lot he can do with his foot movement. There's a lot he can do with his head movement. Canelo doesn't necessarily have to run around the ring, especially after, the middle rounds when, again, Crawford is carrying a lot more weight, so he's going to get more tired. I think Crawford could definitely find himself at the end of this fight more tired than he's ever been in a fight. And especially in that state, Canelo can just use that jab, use that counter punching, use that whole book of tricks that he's accumulated throughout his entire career. And again, land that special punch on Terence Crawford that can really change this fight and really sway this fight in the favor of Canelo. And, Andre Ward made a very good point in his video on this fight, which was really excellent. Canelo asked to prepare for two different styles for this fight, orthodox and southpaw, and Crawford only asked to prepare for one. And that's a bit of an underrated thing here, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it's a challenge for Canelo. I imagine it's something that Canelo's thought a lot about. Again, when Terence Crawford is at his best, those transition moments between orthodox and southpaw are almost non-existent. But if anybody can find them in the later rounds, once he gets more tired and the foot movement slows a little bit, it's Canelo Alvarez, right? If anybody in the world can find that little opening, it's Canelo Alvarez. And I just have too many doubts about Terence Crawford's ability to determine the tempo of the fight for the full 12 rounds. And I think that if Terence Crawford made a wholehearted commitment to the body, really for the entire fight, if he just constantly works the body, because Terence Crawford is not just a power puncher. I mean, he throws almost nothing but bombs, right? He's an accurate power puncher. He lands those bombs with historical accuracy. He landed some ridiculous amount of punches on Spence. Crawford landed 50% of his punches against Errol Spence and 60% of his power punches. Now, Canelo is not Errol Spence by any means. But if Terence Crawford can land to Canelo's body with that level of accuracy, I think he has some sort of a chance to break Canelo down, even at a higher weight. It's just that I don't believe that Terence Crawford is going to commit to the body like that. I think he's going to headhunt. And I think that Canelo is going to be very, very comfortable enticing him into headhunting and not afraid of enticing him into headhunting. Again, especially in the second half of the fight. It might not be the smartest thing for Canelo to do in the early part of the fight, but in the second half of the fight, when Crawford is a little bit slower, he can just completely flummox him and dupe him with some Wile E. Coyote painting a road on the wall BS. I mean, really, that's one of the best parts of these high-level fights. These guys can both make each other look stupid. They really can. They're probably not going to knock each other out, but they're both talented enough. Their hands are both quick enough that we could see some of the better, more iconic exchanges in boxing history. And, people have compared this fight to a lot of different fights. And I know that I picked Canelo in this fight. And so it doesn't exactly bode well for me. But, man, this fight does give the same kind of vibes to me as Mayweather De La Hoya. That's the fight that really rings a bell here. Because I just think to a certain extent, these two have an ability to bring the best out of one another. And I think that Crawford and Canelo are going to have a very similar chemistry where when they get in the pocket and they actually start to trade with each other and be fearless, there is a chance that if they do have that chemistry and they are fearless and they are more willing to go to the body and sort of exchange maybe less to the head, you could get a really exciting, really fun fight where, both these fighters probably take more damage than they have in their entire career. But I think it's unfortunately a little more likely that what I said earlier is going to happen. I know I've kind of covered all three bases. I've said, oh, this fight could be totally slow and boring, or it could be tactical, or it could be a total war. But these are two of the best fighters on the planet. So let's be honest. It's 36 minutes. In real life, it's probably going to be a mix of all three, right? It's probably going to be a mix of all three. There's going to be parts of the fight where it's slow, parts of the fight where it's super technical, where they're standing and trading, where Crawford's jabbing, Canelo's doing those long leads to the body. Those long leads to the body. Got that really high guard, just standing there with their really high guard, eyeing each other down, right? And there could be times where, Canelo is back against the ropes and Crawford's walking him down and they're just trading, swinging big shots. It's unbelievable that we're going to get to see 36 minutes of these two warriors in the ring against each other, of two of the greatest of all time in the ring against each other. And far too much has been said and far too much has been made about, this fight is artificial and it's just a big money fight and nobody wanted this fight. Nobody anticipated this fight. Just make the big fights because this one's going to be good. It's going to be a good fight. I promise you that. Even at the slowest tempo, even if it goes at the slowest tempo, which is what I think is the most likely, which is what I was about to say a few minutes ago, right? That I think the most likely thing here is that once these two realize that they can actually hurt each other, the fight will become, I don't want to say timid, because it could never be timid between these two, especially with how bad Crawford wants it. But these two have a lot to protect. These two really don't want to lose. There's a reason why a lot of money has been coming in on a draw on sports books, which I don't even want to bring that voodoo into this. God forbid. But these are two guys who do not want to lose their undefeated records and who have the ability to stop other fighters from damaging them and from hurting them further and who know all the little tricks in the book to stay out of danger and who both fight, and who both are unbelievable at withstanding damage and great under pressure, great off the back foot, and who just fight like dogs off the back foot. Let's be real. Just when they're put in danger, they just go into panic mode and start swinging like how Manny Pacquiao used to do. They're both of that ilk. They'll just start throwing combos at you if you hurt them. And even if the fight slows to a more manageable pace and it becomes clear that neither of these fighters are going to let the other knock the other out, that even in that situation, you're going to get an extremely high level fight. And the two are still going to try to knock each other out because if Terence Crawford is down in round 11 and round 12, he's going to throw absolute bombs at Canelo to try to KO him. And that's true the other way around. Canelo is going to be sitting on his punches if he knows that he's down in the fight or if he even feels that it's close. And if the fight is close going into the 12th round, that 12th round is going to be awesome. These are not two guys who are going to fight for the draw in this fight. And I think just as a promoter, at least especially on the boxing side, Turki Al-Sheikh has made a lot of the proper decisions from a sporting perspective. And I think this is another one of them. And that it actually is an underappreciated and excellent matchup that's going to make for a classic fight. But you know what? On September 13th in Las Vegas at the big Allegiant Stadium, we are going to see, and I am very excited. I'm sticking with my prediction of Canelo Alvarez by unanimous decision, as he has won so many fights in a row at this point. I think it's going to be a tough first loss for Terence Crawford. I think it's going to be a much tougher second half of the fight than the first half for Terence Crawford. And I think that the story of the fight is really going to be told in the second half. And I think that Canelo is especially going to dominate that second half. I'm more curious about the early rounds. I think the early rounds should be very technical, like I said, just like Triple G versus Canelo, first few rounds. But definitely a big part of the story of this fight is going to come in who lands the bigger punches in those first rounds. And it'll be really interesting to see whose size imposes more. I would imagine that Crawford's game is going to impose more. Crawford's skill is going to impose more early in the fight. But it'll be interesting to see if Canelo's physicality really does wear on Crawford. And again, just how much Crawford is going to be willing to go to the body and how much he's going to be distracted by trying to go upstairs when it's been proven time and time and time again that that doesn't work. Because, I mean, even in camp, Crawford can say, oh, I'm going to chop the tree down. I'm going to go to the body. It's another thing to actually do it when Canelo is giving you the opening and it's right there and it's the only opening and hitting him in the body hasn't been working yet. And, and of course, I've been kind of trying to stay away from it in this video, but last thing I'll say, the weight issue, right? The fact that I just think Crawford's going to get more tired and that Canelo is bigger. Canelo's bigger and hits harder. He hits a lot harder than anybody that Crawford's ever faced. And Crawford's going to be trying to chop that tree down. And, he probably will go to the body a fair amount. But at some point, trying to throw headshots, throwing headshots becomes a response to the fact that when you throw a headshot, you're trying to get a knockout and stop the fight now. Whereas if you throw a body shot, you know that you're committing to do more work. And just in that moment, you don't want to do that work. So you're just going to throw a headshot. You don't even want to think about throwing body shots because you're tired. And throwing body shots means you're going to have to throw more after that. But I could throw this one headshot and get the knockout right now. So let me do it. Right. And I think it's almost Crawford has to think of this fight if he wants to actually win it to a certain extent of every headshot that I throw at Canelo is, you know, a drop in the ocean. It doesn't mean anything, right? You're building a house brick by brick with the body shots. But with the headshots, you're just throwing a drop of water into the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't make any difference. It's Canelo Alvarez. You're not going to flatline him. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe. I cannot wait for this fight. Hope I might even have a video up Sunday morning. Don't hold me to that. I'll definitely have a video up by Monday on the outcome of the fight. I'll have another video up after that on Inoue versus Akhmadaliev. Spoiler alert, I'm picking Inoue. I like Akhmadaliev a lot, but I'm going to pick Inoue. Hopefully I get that video out. But just figured I'd sit down and just spitball a little bit about this Canelo-Crawford fight. Hopefully everything I said made sense. And, you know, hopefully we see, of the three outcomes that I said, between the slow fight, technical fight, exciting fight, hopefully we get that stand in the middle brawl at the end of the fight. Hopefully the fight's a classic. You know, what would be a more fascinating result in the post-fight? I mean, we'll know in the post-fight, right? But what would be a more fascinating result, right? Crawford losing for the first time or Crawford beating Canelo? Because ultimately this fight is about Terence Crawford in that way. So, yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thanks for watching.